I started this program on Om Times Radio in 2016 as a way of exploring my lifelong fascination with science and spirituality and how they blend. Having lived in both sides of my brain since childhood, I've sought out guests who've shared this fascination and experience. With our world and nation in transition as never before in history, those of us who have pursued this path are needed to bring healing, balance, understanding, and compassion to our brothers and sisters. One of the wonderful leaders in the forefront of this field is my guest this week on Destination Unlimited, Dr. Theresa Bullard. Dr. Theresa Bullard is a PhD physicist, the host of Mystery Teachings on Gaia TV, and an international spiritual teacher with the Modern Mystery School. She merges science, ancient wisdom, and powerful time-tested techniques for harnessing consciousness. Dr. Bullard brings a truly fresh and powerfully altering approach. She's the author of The Game Changers, Social Alchemists of the 21st Century. Her website is theresabullard.com, and she joins me this week to discuss her path and how we may share in her discoveries to bring balance and compassion to a rapidly changing world. It's my honor to bring to Destination Unlimited Dr. Theresa Bullard. Welcome, Theresa.
Thank you very much, Victor. It's a pleasure.
And thank you for joining us. Theresa, when we welcome a guest to Destination Unlimited for the first time, we ask them to share their path and how it led to the work that they do. What were your early years like, and how did they lead to physics and then to spirituality?
Yeah, so obviously telling the whole story could be a bit long, but I'll try to keep it brief. So first of all, in my early years, I was raised in a family that was very open, spiritually speaking, and we were encouraged to just find our own path and make up our own minds about things, and yet we were exposed to a lot. So my parents, but my mother in particular, was really into metaphysics. I was, for example, receiving chiropractic and acupuncture and alternative healing modalities really early on when it was still considered odd or woo-woo. And so I had a lot of exposure from a very early age, but I didn't personally gravitate towards it because I just wanted to be accepted and be seen as a normal kid. And it wasn't until I got into college that I really started to find my way into both these areas. When I was in high school and looking at which college to go to, I knew I wanted to go as far as I needed to go with my degree and my education so that I could have a really strong career and really not hit a limit to how far I could go with my career. And I wanted something that would give me always the ability to stay on the cutting edge with whatever was new and interesting to me. And so when I was off looking at colleges, I was on a road trip with my mom, and we were going through Arizona, and we had stopped at University of Phoenix, University of Arizona in Phoenix, and then we were up on our way to northern Arizona, and in between we decided to stop through Sedona. And had a couple days in Sedona. We're experiencing the vortexes there, and just had a really mystical, magical time. And I was so inspired by the time we were heading out of Sedona and into northern Arizona, and we were driving at night. And I remember looking out the car window and just how you can see all the stars of the Milky Way stretching across the desert sky when you have no light pollution out there. And it was just mesmerizing to me. And I was just in this very inspired place. And I remember thinking, I want to know what's out there. Like, God, there's such a beautiful, vast, amazing universe. And I want to know what's out there beyond our mundane little lives here on Earth. And that's when it struck me that, oh, that's what I want to major in. I want to major in astronomy. And so that's what ultimately led me into physics, was that when I chose to go, the university I chose to was University of Denver, and they didn't have a big physics or astrophysics type department. It was a smaller liberal arts university. And when I went into the orientation, I was talking with one of the faculty members and I said, well, I want to major in astronomy. And he's like, oh, well, we don't have astronomy as a major, but are you planning to go to graduate school at some point? And I said, yes. And he said, well, if you want to go to graduate school, what's most important is you have a strong physics background. And then from there, you could go into astronomy or astrophysics in graduate school. And I said, oh, all right, well, I'll give that a try. I never would have thought I'd end up in physics, but that's just sort of where life led me. And I stuck with it through thick and thin. And along the way, though, I had a lot of diversity in college, but when I got into graduate school, I really found myself immersed in 80 hours a week of physics between the research and the classes and the testing and the homework and all of this. And it left me very out of balance after about a year. And after that first year, I thought, wow, what am I doing and why am I doing it? And I started really questioning, what is this for, and is it worth it? And is it what's missing in my life now that I had before? Because it wasn't like me to get so out of balance, and I was starting to feel depressed and just really dissatisfied and disenchanted with everything I was doing. And I really stopped and I started asking questions like, okay, what did I have in my life before that is not here now? And then I knew that it wasn't worth my sense of well-being and happiness to keep doing the PhD studies if I didn't really know what I was going to do with it or why I needed it. And so I was just kind of following the traditional academic career path at that point, and hoping I would figure it out along the way what I wanted to do. And so then I decided, okay, before I quit this, I'm going to really give a try to pull back in the aspects of life that I had previously. So I, brought in creative hobbies and athletics and social time and relationship kind of dimensions of life. And after another year, it all had helped, but it wasn't the key. There was still something really key that was missing. And one day I was at the gym and I was thinking about it in the back of my mind. And it came to surface. There was still one thing I had not brought back into my life that I'd had previously. And that one thing was spirituality. And prior to that point, it was always just sort of on the side in the background, just informing my personal view of life, but it was never really a primary focus. And then all of a sudden, it was the only thing I hadn't yet brought back in that I'd had previously. So I thought, okay, I got to try this. And but at that point, I was so well versed and indoctrinated and educated in the scientific way of thinking that anything I was going to pursue spiritually had to complement or at least not negate what I knew to be true scientifically. So it was hard for me to go into much religious or blind faith type of stuff. So I started exploring in the science and spirituality, science and consciousness genre, and that really got me excited. It reawakened my passion for why I was even doing the scientific pursuit in the first place, and life just took off and started taking on more meaning again, and it brought the joy back in.
That's wonderful. Now, you're talking about physics and including quantum mechanics. When Albert Einstein was looking at early quantum mechanics, he referred to it as spooky action at a distance. What have we since learned that makes this less spooky?
Well, when Einstein, as brilliant as he was pretty devoted to the model of the universe that was rational. And he had a spiritual side to him, but he felt that God had reason behind everything, and that it was a rational universe, and that we should be able to explain things in a reasonable way. And so the classical physics mindset was that if something was going to happen to a particle or a physical object, it had to be directly acted upon by a direct force. And so the whole idea of quantum physics was that you could have two particles that are what they call entangled with each other, and you separate them by large distances, and you do something to one of them, and it instantly affects the other one. And so this is what he called spooky action at a distance, is this phenomenon of entanglement. And it says that things are not having to be directly acted upon by a force, and that that this universe is like not bound by space and time, and that the information can be transferred from one particle to another through instantaneously through space and time, that space and time are not limitations. And so this just didn't compute with his reasonable way of looking at the universe and how it works. And so he didn't like it. But today we know that it is true, and that we have to just shift our mindset from thinking about this physical three-dimensional world in just a limited classical way to realizing that there's this whole other dimensionality, if we want to call it, just this whole other realm that we call the quantum realm, that it kind of it does not have those same limitations. And in fact, everything that you take from the classical physics model, it gets turned on its head when you look at the quantum physics model. And so it's taken scientists a good 100 or more years to really wrap their heads around this. But today we know for sure this is true. We're harnessing the technology that is based upon it. And yet our mindset is often still based on a classical way of thinking of the three-dimensional world. And that's what I really see is that we need to shift is our consciousness and our way of thinking about the world and what's possible, shifting from a classical to a quantum view of things that says, no, we're all connected. Everything is connected. And information can travel instantaneously. And so can our thoughts, our intentions. Consciousness makes a difference. And things are entangled. Things are complementary. So there's these uncertainty. There's possibilities can thrive amidst uncertainty rather than having to have everything be controlled and certain. So we're living in a time of great shifting in terms of our consciousness, because we're finally starting to wrap our heads around these quantum principles, not just how they work from a technological perspective.
So quantum fields could be the answer behind what we call psychic phenomena.
Oh, yeah, I believe so. That thoughts are things, and also, when you look back to ancient tradition, for example, in the Hermetic principles, they say that the all is mind. That is their very first principle, and that everything, it's like we're in a sea of consciousness or a sea of mind, and everything that is ultimately created or manifested in the physical it starts as a thought in that universal mind, or that place of the divine consciousness, if you want to call it, or the mind of God, if you want to call it, or just, the source, and that it has consciousness to it. So yes, I believe that through that field of consciousness, which is not something that physicists have been looking at unless they're starting to find their way more towards spirituality. You have two camps out there. You have people the physicists who are more materialists, that say that our consciousness is a result of physical processes within our brain. And it's just an epiphenomenon, or something that emerges from all these neuronal firings in the brain. And then you have another camp of scientists who say, no, consciousness is primary. It's abundant through the universe, and physical matter is actually the result of consciousness. So they're two very different views of how things come to be. And I tend to subscribe to the consciousness is primary and universal.
And in my experience, as we know, everything is energy, and our intention actually guides and affects that energy, doesn't it?
Yes, I believe that our thoughts, our intention is a form of energy, and it's an intelligent form of energy that can then inform other fields of energy and help to direct them.
We often talk in the work that I do of sharing love and light. Does the human body actually produce light, or is that a metaphor?
There is an actual light that is produced by the human body, and it comes from the DNA itself. There's newer science that mostly it's been researched in places like Europe and Japan and Russia, not so much in the United States, but is very valid science, and there's a whole international community of scientists who talk about something called biophotons, which is that there is a coherent form of light that is produced by or transmitted by the DNA, and the DNA even receives that light in. So they believe that these biophotons that the DNA is putting out and receiving in forms like an information superhighway that the DNA uses to communicate at the speed of light. And that light is actually in the visible range. It's just that it's so low amplitude or so low in intensity that we normally don't see it. But I believe that people who say that they can see auras or energy fields around people are picking up on some of these biophotons that are emitted. And these have been even photographed through things like Kirlian photography and GDV devices and so forth. So there's a lot of evidence behind these biophotons.
Back in 2000, I was teaching a class on a curriculum that I developed called Enervision, which would help people develop whatever their clairs, their sensing skills were. And during that class, a friend of mine was taking a picture camera with regular film. And in one of those shots, an aura, basically, it wasn't Kirlian photography, but it showed an aura of golden light around me. And perhaps I was projecting those photons at the time. My guest is Dr. Theresa Bullard. Please tell our listeners about the event coming up in October and how they can find out about it.
Yeah, so it's October 7th through the 11th in Southern California. It'll be in the Orange County area, and it's a 5-day training called Power Week, which is really several steps of activation and initiation to help supercharge their life and really give them an accelerated boost of progression and awakening of their greater potential and alignment with purpose. So it's an amazing opportunity to get all three of these first couple keys to our empowerment in 1 week.
And they can find it on your website.
Yes, they can find it on my website at theresabullard.com, and then go to the transformational trainings page on the upcoming schedule, and they'll see the banner there for Power Week.
And we'll be back with more of Dr. Theresa Bullard after these words on the Om Times Radio Network.
The best of the holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. Om Times Radio. IOM FM. Om Times Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Om Times. Co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hello, I'm Lisa Berry. Join me every Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for Light on Living. A chance to see new, hear different, and feel more as I shine the spotlight on all the ways to lighten the load of life's challenges. Light on Living is your link to that new way you're looking for, that new understanding that will enhance your life, and that positive connection that will support your growth. So join me and you'll gain insight and start to see things in a new way that motivates you.
America, your children have an amazing superpower. They can help save lives by not having play dates. That's right. By replacing get-togethers with virtual play dates and video chats, they can help slow the evil spread of germs. And if your superheroes do go outside, make sure they continue their superhero wing by staying 6 feet away from others to protect everyone in America land. Find out more at coronavirus.gov. A message from the CDC and the Ad Council.
I was in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean when it happened. There was a sudden jolt and our submarine crashed on the seafloor. We were in total darkness.
That's Dr. Dejana Figueroa, a marine biologist and STEM teacher, talking about a deep sea dive she'll never forget.
It's funny, when I was a kid, I was afraid of the ocean, and there I was, 2 miles below the surface. But as a scientist, you prepare for that. Using our training and a little creativity, we fixed the sub and finished our experiments. The dive was just too important. Every dive gives us glimpses at things few people ever get to see. Glowing creatures, fiery undersea volcanoes. When we got back to the surface, I kissed the ground and called my mom, of course. But you know what? I wouldn't trade that dive for anything.
Dr. Figueroa uses her passion for STEM to discover new things and make the world a better place. She can STEM, so can you. Check out She Can STEM for more stories and inspiration. message from the Ad Council.
Hi, this is Bill Maher. I can find humor in almost anything, but one thing I never laugh about is cruelty to animals. If you don't get the joke either, write People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, 501 Front Street, Norfolk, Virginia, 23510.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week is Dr. Theresa Bullard. We're talking about all of the special work that she does in the fields of both physics and also ancient mysteries. When we think of ancient mystery schools, it brings to mind the Greco-Roman sacred and secret mysteries, initiations, rites, and learning. What is the modern mystery school like, and how does it differ from its ancient counterparts?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the ancient mystery school tradition goes back really far. There's certainly the Greco-Roman, but goes back even further into ancient Egyptian traditions, and probably even further back than that, although it's harder to track the details beyond that. But the ancient mystery schools are based on lineage, and lineage is that there was always this direct transfer of not only the knowledge and the teachings, but also energy through the process of initiation. And those initiations were like a christening in a way, I suppose, but it's like really giving somebody a certain level of authority and direct transfer of energy, and these keys get awakened within their energy field. And then depending on the level of initiation and training that they've been through, they can then be authorized to help transmit some of those energies and teachings to others. So there's several levels of initiation within any mystery school. And, ultimately some people become teachers and what we call key holders of those mystery schools. And so those trainings have been passed down, and those initiations have been passed down. And there's multiple, right now today on the planet, there are 7 ancient mystery school lineages still intact today, meaning they've never had the transfer of knowledge and initiation broken. There were others that were, on the planet at one point in time that were ancient as well, but some of those have been broken in either the transfer of the knowledge and the keys or the energy of the initiation process. But there's 7 of them that are still intact today. And most of them are still taught more in secret, or they're only taught within a certain bloodline or culture. For example, like the Aborigines or some of the ancient Native American tradition. It's still like you can be initiated into those deeper teachings anyways, only if you are really a full-blood native of that lineage. So some of them are still taught in secret, but then there are others where about once a century they would be told that now is a time where people are ready and it's time to open the doors for those who seek from the general public to find their way to the mystery school. And so about once a century, one of these 7 ancient lineages would open up its doors for those who seek. And sometimes it might be just a few days of being open. Sometimes it might be a few years, maybe 30 years. And then at some point they would wind up having to close their doors again because, through history, there were times where the planet was really open and ready and accepting and tolerant. And then those would be times when these ancient teachings could surface more and come out and be taught more openly in the public. But they really empower people to think for themselves. So then there would also be these times where certain powers that be, whether they were religious or political or whatnot, they would feel kind of threatened by too many people having that level of power. And so then they would try to suppress or persecute, or there'd be inquisitions and witch hunts and all of that. And it would drive those mystery school lineages underground again. But they would still continue on with their tradition in secret to wait for the time when the world was ready again. And so typically when these traditions came out into the public again, it would coincide with like a Renaissance, a golden age, an age of enlightenment. And today we have such a time. And then when those teachings were driven underground, it would coincide usually with the Dark Ages or, the Inquisitions. It would coincide with the time of ignorance thriving rather than knowledge thriving. And so today's world is, again, we're living in a very fortunate and exciting time where there is at least certain places on the planet where these teachings can be very openly taught, and there's a certain level of acceptance, or at least tolerance of different spiritual practices and so forth, and knowledge and teachings. And so the modern mystery school is coming from one of these ancient lineages. It's called the lineage of King Solomon. It is very universal teachings. It's not tied to any particular religion. And it's been open-doored since 1997. So just in preparation for the shift into the new millennium, and then it really accelerated and expanded after the new millennium. The Modern Mystery School has been teaching and offering the initiations and activations and so forth that have been a part of the ancient Mystery School lineages. And it's different from something like the ancient Greco-Roman times in that it's adapted to a modern way of life. Life today throws us so many challenges, and it's a very accelerated pace of life on the planet today. And we have lots of distractions and lots of opportunities to get pulled this way and that way. And, it's like life itself is a maze, and we have to find our way through that maze. And so we don't, in the mystery school, in today's world, we don't need to manufacture challenges for people to overcome in order to earn the right to be initiated. It's like life already does that for them. Whereas in the past, in ancient times, they kind of had to manufacture these challenges because it was a very different pace of life, and maybe they weren't always challenged as much in the same kind of ways to test their intuition, to test their insight, their merit, and their ability to trust themselves. So it's very much ancient mystery school lineage, but adapted for modern day and modern world, and yet still very much delivering the power of the lineage and the ancient teachings, but in a way that really applies to our lives today.
In a time of digital communication and Googling everything, I think the concept of a mystery is something that we truly need in our lives. We need something that we can think about that's not something within the grasp, the immediate, something that we have to connect with, don't we?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. A lot of people think, oh, it's a mystery. Why is it a mystery? Well, it's about the mysteries of life. Life does present us with so many mysteries. Who are we? Why are we here? How do we awaken our greater potential? What is the essence of the soul, right? These are the mysteries of life. And I have personally found, as a scientist, science tries to kind of, in a way, solve the mystery, stomp it out in a way, like try to explain everything and just say it's all based on physical processes. And I found that personally that diminished my creativity. It diminished that sense of awe and possibility. And yet when I studied quantum physics personally, I saw that there was something much deeper going on that had meaning, that there was something to explore philosophically there, but in science they didn't want to talk about the philosophy of it or the deeper meaning of it. They just wanted to talk about the physics of it and the mathematics of it. And so when I found my way back into spirituality, and especially into the mystery school tradition, it was presenting the mysteries again, and it was presenting that opportunity to contemplate the deeper meaning behind things, and that led to a sense of awe again at the universe, and to have some mystery, to have some to see life as like magical in a way. It brings a sense of awe and inspiration back into life, a sense of infinite possibility and creativity and no limits, and it really brings us back into balance, because if we're only trying to think of everything from a rational, logical, scientific way of being, there's this whole other dimension of life, of the creative side, that is sometimes irrational and yet very magical and mystical, that is where beauty comes from and where purpose and meaning come from. And so I think it's very important to have a sense of mystery in life.
Absolutely. I first learned of you and your work watching Gaia TV's Mystery Teachings. Congratulations on Season 4. What will you be sharing this season?
Yeah, Season 4 of Mystery Teachings is about the hero's journey, which is the transformational process that we go through in life, that we're meant to go through in life naturally. But it's also a journey of who are we and what is our multidimensional potential. And so we're looking at ourselves through what we call the 22 archetypes of the major arcana, and how they are mirrors or windows into ourselves and the key lessons that we're supposed to learn in life, and how we can work with these archetypes and our awareness of these archetypal forces in our life. And as we become more aware of them, we can participate with them. We can kind of work with those energies in a more conscious way to speed up our progression and to really recognize these higher dimensional forces at work in our life. So the hero's journey is going to be, I think, probably one of the most exciting seasons yet of Mystery Teachings. The first couple seasons, the first season was all about the physics of things and all the ways in which modern physics and ancient metaphysics align and parallel each other. The second season was all about our human potential and how, again, the science and the metaphysics match up. The third season was more mystery school type teachings of alchemy and Kabbalah and crystals and astral travel and things like that. And then this fourth season is about the hero's journey and our multidimensional potential.
And if you don't currently subscribe to Gaia, go online and Google TV's Mystery Teachings on Gaia TV, or Mystery Teachings rather on Gaia TV, and subscribe, because her shows are wonderful, and there's a lot of other great teachers out there too. So if listeners to this show would love Gaia TV if you're not currently subscribed.
They can also, if they want to get a little sneak peek of the trailer, they can go to mysteryteachings.com.
Wonderful. Why do you think we're facing so many challenges at this time?
Well, personally, I believe that we're going through a pretty big leap in evolution of human consciousness, human behavior, and our self-mastery on this planet. We have huge potential, and there's so many leaps further of where we can go in our advancement on this planet, both technologically and in terms of the type of world that we are creating here, and then also in consciousness. But I feel, so for example, scientists are talking about how we're, within the next 100 years, we are the current generations that are alive are the most important generations of all of humankind, because we're poised to make what they call the leap into a type 1 society, which is a world where we are learning how to harness all the energy available on the planet through natural clean energy resources. And then from there, we're able to start exploring into space. And that's already starting to happen, but we're still kind of we're in this tug of war between old ways of producing energy on the planet and new ways. And, old models of have and have not, and competition and survival of the fittest, versus a new paradigm way of life on Earth that is about cooperation and prosperity for all, and let's create a greater world of balance and harmony and peace. And so we're at this precipice of making this big shift. And because of that, there's a lot of tension between the old and the new. And, to make that shift, it requires change. And people unconsciously resist change. And so there's a lot of turmoil in the world because of that unconscious resistance to this shift and to this change, because it means letting go of old ways, the old comfort zone, the old power structures, the old coping strategies that worked but aren't working anymore. And so, it's a leap into the unknown in a way, or into times of some uncertainty, because it won't be the same old deal that it used to be. And yet it's very exciting. So if we can let go of those old ways and move towards this unknown and into this time of uncertainty, from a quantum physics perspective, that uncertainty opens up huge possibilities to us. And then it's a matter of what do we choose to create. And so technologically, we're moving forward. And consciousness, human consciousness, and our awareness of our responsibility of how we use the power of these technologies and tools and the knowledge that we have huge responsibility with how we're going to use that. If we keep doing it the way we used to, well, we might head down a path of self-destruction on a grand scale. But if we can shift in our consciousness and start using our tools and our knowledge and our technology towards the good of the whole, then we can move towards that type 1 society. We can move towards a world of greater prosperity, balance, thriving, and we can solve the problems of the world today. We have all the resources, all the technology, all the strategies that we need to be able to solve the issues of the world within just a few years. And I'm talking environmental issues, pollution, the economy, the starvation around the world. Like, all of these issues can be cleaned up and solved within a few years if we can just shift our consciousness to get on board with this new paradigm way of doing things. So that's the leap that we're about to be taking here.
And it involves also compassion for one another.
Absolutely.
The key ingredient. My guest is Dr. Theresa Bullard. We'll be back with more of Theresa after these words on the Om Times Radio Network.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. AscendingHearts.com.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of Om Times Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going Om. My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers, pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
So I'm a cat, and I just moved in with this new human, and she's got this little toy she's always playing with, all day long. Tap, 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 bloop, bloop. She can't put it down. There it is. Oh, and get this. She even talks to it. Last week she asked it for Chinese, and guess what? Egg rolls showed up. Like magic. Humans have cool toys.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
Hi, we're the Goo Goo Dolls. We're fortunate that our daughters have what they need to grow and learn. But that isn't the case for nearly 13 million kids in the U.S. that struggle with hunger.
Childhood hunger is a heartbreaking reality that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and provides it to families and children in need.
You can help kids in need in your community by visiting feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
My mother was always very active and independent, and she was familiar with her neighborhood. But one day, she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. She wasn't even really sure where she was at.
It's important for you to talk to someone about it. I felt so much better after my son told me, Mom, we'll figure it out.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
It's 4 a.m. and you're sucking baby snot through a tube because she's congested. If you love her that much, love her enough to make sure she's buckled in the right car seat. Find out more at nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week is Dr. Theresa Bullard. Theresa, ancient alchemy involved the purification, maturing, and perfecting of certain materials. An example of this was the transmuting of lead to gold. How does modern alchemy approach this? And may we personally transmute ourselves with it? And what are the 7 stages of alchemy?
All right, that's a lot of questions. Yeah, so alchemy is, first and foremost, I want to just say that alchemy is the science of how things transform. It's a science of transformation and purification and raising vibration from a lesser state to a greater state. So it's not just the old idea of turning lead into gold. That in some ways was a very physical, real phenomenon that people did, but in other ways that's a metaphor for taking the lead or the impurities, the dross, the things that are corruptible, and then transforming it into the gold, which is the perfection or the pure, incorruptible form. And so the lead into gold is a metaphor of how we transform from lesser to greater. And so everything can go through this transformational process. And alchemy is a natural process of evolution within the world, within the universe. It happens at all scales, from the microorganisms and even lower all the way up to supergalactic structures. You can find alchemy at work. So it is a science. It is a natural flow and process of evolution. But when we engage with alchemy, it is about us consciously coming to understand what those steps or those stages of the alchemical process are. And then 2, how can we participate with that? How can we work with it and harness it to speed up the transformational process, to perfect things and to engage with that co-creatively? So the alchemists of old were the predecessors to the scientists of today. They were trying to understand nature and how can we then harness it, work with it, speed up that evolutionary process, and be an active member in creating and perfecting this world. And so, but in order to really do alchemy, a lot of people think of just the external form of alchemy, working with herbs, working with minerals, lead into gold, and so forth. That's what we call practical alchemy. And you still very much have practical alchemy today in the world. There are alchemists who are still using the old techniques, and I know several of them, and they're doing great work. But to really do true alchemy, you have to do the alchemy on yourself as well, because the alchemists always believed that the experimenter and their experiment were entangled with each other, that whatever you do to your experiment, you are doing it to yourself. And whatever's going on with you also affects your experiment. And so they never saw the scientist as being separate from the thing that they're experimenting on. They always saw this entanglement. And I think that alchemical mindset, the old ways of doing it, really matches with today's quantum mindset of the observer effect. They recognize that our state of being has an effect on what we're doing. So if we want to perfect something outside of us, we need to first perfect ourselves. We need to bring ourselves into a higher state, a more purified, refined, higher vibrational state. And so there's the personal alchemy of transformation. And then from there, as we achieve it within, then we can apply it into the outer world. And we can also affect that transformational process in things outside of us, whether we're talking plants and minerals to make medicines, or we're talking about society and doing social alchemy, or we're talking about psychological alchemy and working with the mind and so forth. And it's very relevant to our world today. We are going through a transformational process. And so if we want to work with that transformational process, and it's almost like birthing something. If you want to give birth, when a woman's giving birth to something, she needs to push with the contractions versus fight it. And so we are going through a rebirthing as a human society, and we need to learn to work with those contractions versus fighting it. So I feel that when people really understand the alchemical process, they can be more conscious of, okay, what can we do to move through this stage of the alchemical process versus fighting and resisting it. So that's where, when we get a good look at the 7 stages of transformation, that is where it really helps us to recognize where are we right now in the transformational process, and where do we need to get to, and what can we do in this stage to get to the next stage. So it's about really empowering us to become more active and conscious participants with the alchemical process so that we can speed up our own evolution.
And what are those 7 stages?
First stage is what we call calcination. And calcination is a breaking down of the old form. To calcinate something means to actually burn it to ash. And so we're breaking down that old form. It's a death in a way of the original form, and it's a destruction. Contained within that old form is the essence of what we need to extract or what we need to draw out, but it's bound up in all this corrupted form or this pollution that has gotten in the way of its ability to express its full potential. The second step then is what we call dissolution. And dissolution is more of a watery kind of experience within the alchemical process. So after the burn or after the upset of the calcination, often what emerges next is emotion, right? There's a lot of stuff that gets stirred up within our subconscious. We get emotional. There's some reaction. There might be some hurt, some sadness or disillusionment. So there's all this emotional energy that gets stirred up within us. And in the physical processes, to dissolve something. So you take the burned ash and you put it into water or some liquid solution and you stir it all up so that it all dissolves into the solution. And it's a purifying process. So it's beginning to extract out the essences from the impurities. And so for us, that's, again, it's the stirring up of things from the subconscious. And those need to come to surface so that we can clear up what's what. And then that leads us to the third stage, which is called separation. And separation is literally to start to separate out what's essential from what is not. And even within what's essential, there's different types of essential pieces within that original form, and we need to separate each of those essentials out so that they can each be purified further before they're ultimately brought back together again. But then once we've gotten clear and we've separated out the essential pieces, the next stage is we further purify those separately, and then we bring them into what we call conjunction, which is the fourth stage of the process. And conjunction is to bring things back together again, to reunite them, but to reunite them in a way that is in perfect harmony and proportion. It's very measured. It's a controlled process, and it's bringing us back into connection with our own true essence and pulling those pieces back together so we kind of see a new identity starting to emerge that is separate from or different from the old personality and ego stuff that was polluting the issue. So it really puts us back in touch with our true self. From there, it's easy for people to get complacent again because they start feeling comfortable again. Like, okay, I'm back in my own skin. We've just been through all this intensity, and now things are starting to get more comfortable and positive again. And so it's the tendency of people is to just sort of stop there and just get comfortable again there. But the transformation and the evolution and the magic happens outside the comfort zone. So, and then we go through the final 3 stages, which take a lot of patience and discipline and consistency to keep the process moving forward. So the 5th stage is what we call fermentation. And the fermentation is to ferment something is to let whatever is corruptible within it, let it rot, let it die. And as it does, it's more the subtle impurities that are still contained within it that are potential places of corruptibility. And so those more subtle impurities or deeper attachments, we could say, are the things that we need to let die, and we need to root them out so that we can free the final, spirit that is contained within it. And then as we emerge from fermentation, usually there's a vision, there's a breakthrough, there's an epiphany of light and there's an illumination that comes, and that's the marker of when we know, okay, we're successfully moving through fermentation. Now we have to move into the final 2 stages. And the 6th of the 7 stages is what we call distillation. And to distill something is kind of, if you think of the old sort of chemistry sets where you have a beaker and you have like a water solution and you put something in that and you heat it up and it evaporates. And then as it rises up the column, as it evaporates, it then it's all contained, right? So it's not rising up into open air. It's still contained within the beakers and sort of the various distillation apparatus. And as it's rising into this air state, at some point it cools off and then it recondenses into another vessel. And we go through several stages of this evaporation from water to air and then recondensing back to water. But metaphorically, what this means is that we're rising from the dense state of physicality up into a higher state of more subtle energy or just consciousness, a higher state of consciousness. In that more subtle state, we are receiving or more receptive to illumination, spiritual wisdom coming in, energy being infused into it, the spirit being connected to, and then as it recondenses or it comes back down, come and embody that back into the physical. So it's about really merging heaven and earth, so to speak, or rising from the below to the above and bringing the above to the below, and continuing to cycle through many stages of this distillation process so that we can merge the two. So we can merge heaven and earth, physical and spiritual, together and embody that here into the physical world. And then the final stage would be coagulation, which is a crystallization or a solidification of that higher spiritual potential being fully embodied into the physical. It is the final manifestation of heaven on earth, or creating a better way of life on this earth. And in many ancient traditions, there was a prediction, like in the ancient Eastern tradition, they called it Shambhala. We had the original Shambhala, and then we have the new Shambhala that we're supposed to be creating, which is a world of peace and enlightenment and sustainability and harmony and balance. And so we are here at a time on the planet where we get to be the alchemists, so to speak, to help create that new Shambhala, to manifest a higher way of life on earth.
Theresa, thank you for sharing that wonderful, wonderful wisdom. One more time, please tell our listeners where they can find out more about you and all of this amazing work that you do.
Yeah, so they can find out about me at theresabullard.com, which is my main website. And all of the different offerings and teachings and my schedule of training is there, available on that website. They can also go to mysteryteachings.com to find out about the Mystery Teachings show on Gaia TV. And then, if they want to come and train with me in person, there is that opportunity in October with the Power Week in Southern California.
What an exciting time, and thank you so much for all that you bring to our society and humanity today. It's something we desperately need.
Yeah, thank you, Victor, and it was a pleasure to be able to share with your show.
And thank you for joining us on Destination Unlimited. I'm Victor, the Voice Fuhrman. Have a wonderful week.